What time are we starting Friday?
9 a.m. You're all set now.
Okay. I'm not sure what's going on here. My laptop just stopped displaying the agenda, so I have to go to my cell phone.
If it looks like I'm looking away from you guys, it's because I'm using my TV as a iPad tonight for my agenda.
Okay, so we'll get the meeting rolling. Good evening, folks, members of the public, council, staff. Welcome to the November 16th meeting of the Committee of Adjustment. Can I get someone to call the meeting to order? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lang, that the meeting is called to order. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Can I get an approval of the agenda as presented? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Jaworski, that the agenda is approved. All those in favor? Carried. We'll move on to the minutes of the November 2nd meeting. Can I get approval of those minutes? Moved by Mayor Prevost, second by Councillor McDonnell, that the minutes of the November 2nd meeting be approved. All those in favor? Minutes approved. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Not seeing any or hearing any. We'll move on to item number 5, A34-20, Kenville. Miss Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get started with the required wording under the Ontario Planning Act. Just make sure you can see my screen okay?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. There we go. So welcome everyone to the meeting this evening. For members of the public that are participating by Zoom or by phone, you will be permitted to speak to the respective application following my presentation. Prior to speaking, please state your name and address for the record. To make a comment, you're welcome to use the raise hand function and the chair will call on you for your comment. If you have registered to participate in the meeting by phone to speak to your application, you will be asked if you would like to comment on the application after the presentation. So this is a hearing under Section 44 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend this hearing and or make written or verbal representation either in support of or in opposition to the proposed minor variance. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submission at this hearing before the minor variance is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the minor variance of the Committee of Adjustment to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, also known as LPAT. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at this hearing or make written submissions to the Committee of Adjustment before the minor variance is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the LPAT unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. We have 4 applications to cover this evening, so we're going to get started with application A34-20. This property is located at part of Lot 17, Concession 7 in the geographic township of Lancaster, now in the township of South Glengarry. It is vacant land, so it does not have a civic address. This is the location of the map. You can see that it fronts on Concession Road 8 and is framed by a Third Line Road. And then this slide shows that the zoning of the property is agriculture. The green means agriculture, which is also prime agricultural land. So the purpose of the variance that's requested this evening is the property owner is currently using the subject property as an agricultural use. There's currently a variety of farm animals on the subject property. And the following relief from our zoning bylaw 3809 is requested. And the purpose of the request is to permit an agricultural use on an existing lot that is 8.21 hectares in size, where the zoning bylaw requires a minimum lot area of 20 hectares. This application was filed due to a complaint received regarding animals on an undersized lot. Therefore, the applicant had a couple of options to either remove the animals or to proceed with filing a minor variance application, and was very cooperative with trying to gain compliance. So the property, as I mentioned, is designated agricultural resource in the county official plan, and this does conform to the general intent of the official plan. And the property is zoned agricultural and conforms to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. The subject property is not too small, in my opinion, to be a real concern for habiting animals on the site. And these applications were circulated to the applicable municipal planning staff. Building and planning have no concerns. United Counties were circulated and they had no concerns. And to date, I've received no public comments or any phone calls regarding the application. So if there's any questions, please let me know.
I can't see all members of the committee at this time. Ms. Haley, I have a question. When was it decided that if 20 hectares was minimum lot size for, it seems like quite a bit for, I don't think you would see a milking operation set up on 20 hectares of land, but I think 8.21 hectares, if I'm correct, is 20 acres of land. Seems quite a bit of land for a small hobby farm. At what point was the bylaw set up for the 40 hectares?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going by memory here, but I'll be able to answer your question quite accurately. So prior to 2009, the township had three zoning bylaws, one for Charlottenburg Township, one for Lancaster Township, and one for the village. And each township, not so much the village, because we don't allow agricultural use in the village, but for each township, the land areas varied. So for example, in Charlottenburg Township, in prime agricultural land, if I remember correctly, your minimum requirement was 84 or 86 acres. So we actually reduced it to 50 acres. And in Lancaster Township, again, I'm going by memory, but I believe it was 44 acres was the conversion. And so prior to creating our bylaw in 2009, our agricultural committee reviewed the requirements of the provincial policy of the day, as well as the previous bylaws, to try and come up with a kind of a compromise or to meet you in the middle type thing between the two municipalities. Also, keep in mind, the provincial policy statement was really discouraging hobby farms in the prime agricultural areas. They want larger parcels of land to allow for not hobby farm purposes, because your main use of hobby farms is a residence. And then your secondary use of a hobby farm would be your animals. And they typically tend to be more so pets or a lifestyle, as opposed to a lot making a living, right? So the good thing is moving forward, this is something that we're going to be able to look at as a municipality. And I believe you're aware of that as the deputy mayor, in terms of after we have our new official plan, we'll be able to look at reducing those lot areas for agricultural uses. But that's kind of the history and how we arrived at those lot sizes. That's what triggers minor variances from time to time when we have undersized parcels that are being utilized for agricultural purpose, such as livestock.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
History lesson. I appreciate it. It was long-winded. So thank you for that, Ms. Haley. Are there any other questions of the committee? Seeing none, are there any questions of the public? I'm looking on the attendees list and I don't see anyone's hand up at this time. I'll wait a few extra moments just in case. Okay, seeing none, may I have a mover of the motion? Mayor Prevost, is that to approve as accepted? Okay, seconded by Councillor McDonnell. All those in favor of approving this application? Motion is carried. Moving on to A35-20, Villeneuve. Ms. Haley.
I'm just going to go back to my presentation. Okay, so A34-20, I'm sorry, A35-20, excuse me. So this property is located at part of lots 14 and 15, concession 2, south side of the Raisin River, in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in South Glengarry, and it's known as 5654 County Road 27. This is a key map of the subject property. You can see that to the north of it is the river, and then on the east side is framed by County Road 27, in which the property is accessed. In 2018, our council passed a bylaw known as a secondary unit bylaw, which amended the township's zoning bylaw to permit secondary units to be constructed within a dwelling or an accessory structure, or to be a completely second home on the property, providing that the second dwelling unit was smaller than the primary unit. And that was kind of a requirement of the guidelines of the province at the time to create, or still is, to create a secondary unit bylaw. So if we have an applicant that's not able or not willing to work with that bylaw and would like to build a larger home, they have a couple of options. One, they can enlarge the existing dwelling. So we've had situations where some people consider doing an addition or adding an attached garage, or they could apply for a minor variance to seek permission to deviate from the bylaw to allow their newer home to be larger than the existing home. So this is the first type of application we've received like this in our township since 2018. So the purpose of this proposed variance is the applicant is proposing to construct a secondary dwelling unit that is larger than the gross floor area of the primary unit. So the permission that they're looking for is to construct the secondary dwelling unit to have a gross floor area of 2,694 square feet, where the primary dwelling unit has a gross floor area of 2,088 square feet. So when we receive an application like this, one of the first things we look at is there going to be adequate space on the property to accommodate this type of use? Are we going to be concerned with how this property is serviced? For example, in an area that this property is located, there's no municipal services, so it's serviced by a septic system and a well. So I want to show you this drawing that the applicant provided, and the applicant did a great job, in my opinion, kind of showing the area of the property. So you can tell right away that the property is quite large. And so if you can follow my mouse, where my mouse is, this is showing the existing structure, and that structure is currently accessed by County Road 27, just north of McGilvery. And the principal residence, did I say McGilvery? 19, sorry. The principal residence is 2,068 square feet. And you can see that it's located in this location. The area in the blue here, showing the blue rectangle, is where the proposed secondary dwelling will be located. So you can see that there's lots of space on the property. There's adequate distance between the two structures. And this new dwelling is proposed to be 2,694 square feet in size. So again, we want to make sure there's adequate space for separation distances from the structures, as well as to ensure that there's no issues with having a second septic system on the property. So the property is designated agricultural resource. Even though it's designated agricultural resource, you are allowed to have a secondary dwelling unit on agricultural land. And so it does conform to the general intent of the official plan, as well as the zoning bylaw. And the application was circulated to our applicable municipal planning, or excuse me, departments. Planning and building have no concerns. We also circulated to the United Counties, and their comments were, transportation will not permit a second entrance to the newly constructed secondary dwelling. There is a second entrance in the area where the proposed dwelling is, but it's utilized right now as kind of more of a farm entrance. And so it's possible that the property owner will be accessing the new dwelling via the existing residential driveway, or they will work with the United Counties to see what options there will be. The other comment from the United Counties as well was to ensure that if their proposed construction is in 45 meters of the center line, that they would require a setback permit. But there's lots of space to be able to go beyond the 45 meters, which I believe is the intent of the applicant. I've had no comments from the public at all. And as I said, we spent a lot of time reviewing this application, walking the property owner through the options, and we don't have any concerns with what's being requested because of the size and space. So thank you.
Okay, I see Councillor Jaworski's hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, Ms. Haley. If you could remind me what the logic is again, that why they generally want the secondary residence to be smaller than the primary one? And also, if this goes ahead, does this secondary residence essentially become the primary one now on the property, now that it's bigger, or does that matter actually?
Okay, good question. So from the research and training we had on the secondary unit was really, I mean, the purpose of secondary unit policies that the province was created was to allow for aging in place, affordable housing. Those were kind of the two main focuses on the purpose of creating the policy. And I think generally in those cases, they tend to be smaller units that they're creating. In South Glengarry, you may recall that we chose to leave our bylaw really flexible and allow the secondary unit to be, it just simply says smaller than the primary. Some municipalities capped it at 1,000 square feet. Some capped them at 800 square feet because they didn't want the secondary dwelling to be much larger and drown out the primary. To be honest with you, from my recollection, there was no specific hard rule that said we had to do this. So this was just something that a lot of the municipalities were doing, and that's what how our bylaw was written. In terms of your question, does it matter what becomes secondary or primary after the fact? In my opinion, no. And one reason for that is these units are never allowed to be severed. So they're always going to coexist, and that is a requirement. So at the end of the day, it just means that there's going to be two dwellings on the property. And getting back to the size aspect, when you think of this policy, being driven from the province, a lot of times you could be dealing with urban areas with higher density where you're just not going to have the space to have larger units. And in some areas, even in our community, you might be in settlement areas where you just wouldn't have the space on a property to have a large home. But when you get into our rural areas, there's going to be lots of options for people that get creative to build very large homes if they choose to. And it'll come down really to what meets their needs, affordability, and those things. So I hope I answered your question okay, but that's really where it comes from.
And sorry, I lost the connection for just a moment, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you answered my question about does it matter now that the second home is bigger? Is there some sort of flip in the designation, and does that matter?
Yeah, so it really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, these two dwellings always have to coexist. They're never allowed to be severed. So it really doesn't matter.
Okay, are there any other questions of the committee members? Okay, I'll check and see if there are any of the participants have their hands up. I don't see any other hands up at this time. Can I get a mover to approve as presented? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lang. All those in favor to approve the application? Application is carried. Moving on to A 36-20 McEwen, Ms. Haley.
Okay, so A3620 is located at part of Lot 10, Registered Plan 176 in Geographic Township of Charlottenburg, now in South Glengarry, and it's also known as the Farminger Point subdivision. So this is a key map of the property where you can see County Road 2. Just to the west of here would be the city of Cornwall. So the boundary of Cornwall, you're entering into South Glengarry. And this is the first subdivision you come across in South Glengarry, located on the south side. The subject property is almost at the point of the subdivision, directly fronting onto the St. Lawrence River. The purpose of the minor variance is the applicant proposes to construct a single detached dwelling within the watercourse setback, and they're looking for relief to reduce the watercourse setback from 30 meters to 15 meters. I know I repeat myself often with the committee when I say that anything between 30 and 15 meters setback we're permitted to support, because that's what our bylaw permits. And you'll hear often both the municipal staff and conservation authority supporting that. And then anything beyond 15 meters really comes down to the committee to review the applications. So in this case, they're looking to reduce the setback to only 15 meters. This property is designated residential district, and it's located in the urban settlement area of Glenwalter. And the property is zoned residential 1. There is a tiny bit of floodplain right on the very edge of the property, and it has no impact to the property at all. Kind of the beginning of our municipality doesn't have a lot of floodplain along the waterfront. And our application was circulated to the planning and building staff, and we have no concerns. And the Raisin Region Conservation Authority was also circulated on this application. They require an Ontario regulation permit, which is a standard requirement. And in fact, the applicant is already aware of this and has filed a septic system permit with the RCA as well as the municipality, and is also working with them to obtain their Ontario regulation permit if the development is able to proceed as per the request this evening. And I've received no public comments whatsoever on this application.
Okay, are there any questions of the committee members? Pretty straightforward. I will go to participants. I do not see anyone's hand up, so I'll move to ask for an approver and a seconder. Moved by Mayor Prevost, second by Councillor McDonnell, that the application be approved as presented. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Moving on to A37-20 Winchester, Ms. Haley.
Okay. Okay, so this property is also located in the Glenwalter area. It's known as part of Lot 32, Registered Plan 101. Again, no civic number attached because it's vacant land. This is the location of the subject property. My next map is going to actually have a better reflection of it because the area actually doesn't include this, this little tip, if you will, where the existing house is located, and I'll explain why. So the property recently received provisional consent or approval of a severance application, and it resulted in the retained land having insufficient public road frontage on Samuel Drive. So for example, anytime you sever a parcel of property, you want both your severed and your retained land to have a minimum of 40 meters of public road frontage and a minimum lot area of 1 acre. So in this particular case, this property actually fronts, I'm going to go back to the map. It fronts on Samuel in this location right here, and it fronts on this road allowance right here, as well as this road allowance right here. However, these two road allowances are not constructed yet. This part of the subdivision has been registered, but not physically constructed as of yet. So eventually, this property will have 3 points of access if and when that becomes part of the public right of way. So the property is designated rural settlement area and rural district in the county official plan. It has 2 different designations because a portion of the property falls just outside of the subdivision, or excuse me, settlement area. And then a majority of the property is zoned residential 1 holding, floodplain holding, and rural. The reason why it's zoned residential 1 holding and floodplain holding is because that area is part of our growth area for Glenwalter, and eventually someday it may be developed. But until such time that it is, we keep the holding pattern on that property to ensure that we're satisfied with the proposed type of development. This is a better map that shows the area where the severed portion. So you can see the area in pink, which would contain the dwelling. And then the area in blue is what's going to be retained and possibly eventually sold. And this is where the public road frontage is on Samuel Drive. Council members may recall at our last council meeting, council made a decision to remove the 1 foot reserve in this area to allow this property to have public road frontage. And we may request the 1 foot reserve to be put back on, or we may leave it as is, depending on if there's ever development proposals for future development of that property in the future. So once again, these applications were circulated to municipal staff and we have no concerns. The RCA was also circulated on the application, and the reason for that is because of the floodplain portion of the property that's along the creek on the severed lands and, or excuse me, on the retained lands. And they had no comments to date. And they were also supportive of the severance application being approved. And I've not received any formal public comments. I have spoken with one nearby property owner wanting to know the proposed use of the retained lands. And then I also received an email later this afternoon asking a similar question, but at this time we're just dealing with the request to reduce the public road frontage. And that's all I have for this application.
Thank you. I cannot see Councillor Jaworski or, okay, thank you. Are there any questions of the committee? Okay, seeing none, I'm checking to see if anyone from the public has their hands up. I didn't see anyone's hand up. I'll just check one more time, as I know Ms. Haley had received some calls today on this application.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
Warren, just check with the person whose phone number is there because they would not be able to raise their hand. So I'll just check and see.
Yep, please do. Thank you.
I'm not sure who's on the phone with us, but if are you looking to speak to any particular application? You can go ahead. You're unmuted.
Hello, welcome to the meeting. Would you be able to state your name and your address? I'm
not
showing
sure
them
if they're
as
talking
they're
loud enough.
not muted.
Yeah, it says they're talking, but we can't hear them. So I'm not sure if they're not talking loud enough.
Hello. It seems as though they're close by with two people listening because it's echoing back.
And they've
Ms.
muted
Haley,
themselves again, so.
if we're having technical difficulties, will this individual still have time to submit written comments? Or this is,
No, unfortunately, this is their only opportunity because the committee would be required to make a decision this evening unless you felt compelled to defer it. I
Okay.
could make one suggestion.
there is a member of the public who raised their hand, and we'll go to that, Ms. Haley, and hopefully
Okay.
we'll be able to get this issue resolved. Thank you. Go ahead, Stefan. Stefan Bordeaux, are you there? If you are, please go ahead and speak.
Ms. Haley, I believe this is the gentleman you had spoken with on the phone today.
Mr. Boudreau was the gentleman that I spoke to this morning, yes.
Mr. Boudreau, are you there?
Mr. Chair, we could always encourage them to type their information in the chat if they can't hear us. Maybe that's possible because their clerk could see that, or you can see that.
Chat's not enabled. I'm sorry, Ms. Haley.
That's not enabled? Okay, I apologize.
Okay.
Or we can encourage them to call in maybe.
The clerk is trying to get a hold of
Okay.
whoever's on the phone, I think at this point, or is it Mr. Border, the one on the phone? See if was Mr. Boudreau in? Oh,
Let me know if you can hear this okay. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I can hear it. Do you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so just a couple questions. Just curious, not new to this, but if you guys were to go with the road access, the 20 meters, would it be serviced by septic well? Is there plans for this? And if we don't allow the severance of 40 from 40 to 20, does that mean they have to go up the road on Sapphire Hills?
Okay, thank you for your question. Could you state your name for the record, sir?
Yeah, my name is Stefan Boudreau. I'm at 18284 Samuel Drive.
Okay, perfect. Ms. Haley, did you understand the question?
I
that Mr.
did.
Boudreau- Okay,
I did. So if I understand correctly, at this time, there's no proposed development on the retained land, which is the property we're talking about this evening. However, if a person wanted to develop that land or build a home on it, they would be required to install a septic system and a well, because that land is not serviced, nor is it intended to be serviced. As for the last comment, the severance has already been approved subject to this condition of the minor variance. If the minor variance is not approved, then the severance would not be approved either. It would mean that the land would be required to exist in its entirety the way it was previous to filing the severance application. Their only other option would be to wait until the public accesses are built off of Sapphire Estates Phase 5, which is known as, the first one is Ruby Drive, and that's not constructed as of yet. So I think that answers both of your questions.
Yeah, sort of. I guess we'll have to come back later, I guess, when they start developing and we get further ahead with this. Because we always figured like Lorette Road and Sapphire Hill would get developed way before the back.
That could be, sir. I mean, we don't know when applications will be filed. So you never know when development could come forward. Another item I'll bring to your attention, because that property is zoned holding, so it's zoned residential 1 holding. If a development application comes forward, it would have to be by plan of subdivision, which means that the abutting property owners will be circulated again to be able to comment on the subdivision process. Also, a condition of the subdivision would be to change the zoning to remove the holding symbol to allow building permits to be issued. And once again, the public would be circulated. So if we have development in that location, you will have at least 2 more opportunities to participate.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, that was good. All right, and I believe that is the only one with their hand up at this time. Okay, so that being said, can I get a mover and a seconder to approve as presented? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, second by Councillor Lang, to approve the application as presented. All those in favor? Motion is carried. All righty. And, oops. Okay, moving on to number 9, next meeting, December 7th. Do we have a couple of applications on the go right now, Ms. Haley?
We do. I'll be circulating 3 applications tomorrow for our December 7th meeting.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's busy.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, thank you, members of the public, staff, and council. And can I get someone to adjourn the meeting?
Thank you.
Moved by everyone. Thank you. And we'll see you shortly for our public meeting. It's the same link.